Hi, everybody. Today we're reading chapter 15 of Narcissus and Goldmund. It's been a while, but I gotta finish this doggone book. So, in the last chapter, I believe, what's his face? Goldmund was finally done with the wandering life and he wanted to go sculpt. So, he's gonna head back to the town where he was supposed to be, where he did all the sculpting, and the dude had the daughters and he kicked them out in the night. Was that house? Or was it the house where the dude was like, you can have, yeah, that dude. He was like, you can have my daughter and my legacy. And he was like, nah, I gotta go wander. So I think he's over the wandering life and he's headed back. I'm really curious to see when he's finally gonna head back to Narcissus. I mean, I imagine things are not gonna work out in this chapter because if things do work out in this chapter, then why would he head back to Narcissus? We're in chapter 15. How many chapters are in this friggin' thing? Eek. 16. I need to finish this ASAP. All right, whatever, maybe 20. Okay, here we are. Finally, the goal was reached. Goldmund entered the longed-for city by the same gate through which he had, so many years ago, stepped for the first time in search of his master. News from the bishop's city had already reached him on the road as he was approaching. He knew that the plague had been there too, that it was perhaps raining still. People had told him of riots and unrest, and that a governor had been sent by the emperor to restore order, to enforce emergency laws, and protect life and property. The bishop had left the city immediately after the outbreak of the epidemic and was living far away in one of the castles in the country. The wanderer had shown little interest in this news. As long as the city was still standing, and in it the workshop in which he wanted to work, everything else was unimportant to him. When he arrived, the plague had subsided. The people were waiting for the bishop's return and the governor's departure, and looking forward to taking up their accustomed peaceful existence once more. When Goldmund saw the city again, a feeling he had never before experienced, the emotion of homecoming flooded through his heart, and he made an unusually severe face to control himself. Everything was still in its place: the portals, the beautiful fountains, the clumsy old tower of the cathedral, and the slender new one of the Church of St. Mary, the clear bells of the Church of St. Lawrence, the broad shining marketplace. Oh, how good that it had waited for him. Once on the road, he had dreamed that he had arrived and found everything unfamiliar and changed, some sections in decay and ruin, and others equally unrecognizable because of new buildings and unpleasant landmarks. He walked through the streets close to tears, recognizing house after house. He found himself almost envying the solid burghers, their pretty, secure houses, their fenced-in lives, the comforting, secure feeling of having a home, of belonging in a room or in a workshop, among wives and children, servants and neighbors. It was late afternoon. On the sunlit side of the street, houses, taverns, gilt emblems, carved doors, and flower pots were bathed in a warm glow. Nothing recalled the fact that death and madness had raged. Cool, light green and light blue, the clear river streamed under the resounding vaults of the bridge. For a while, Goldmund sat on the embankment. Dark, shadow-like fish still glided by down there in the crystal greenness, or were motionless, their noses turned against the current. A feeble gold shimmer still blinked here and there from the twilight of the depths that promised so much and encouraged dreaming. Other waters had fish too, and other bridges and other towns offered pretty sights. And yet it seemed to him that he had seen nothing like this for a long time, that he had not felt anything similar. Two butcher boys passed, pushing a calf. They were laughing, exchanging glances and jokes with a maid who was taking down wash above them on a balcony. How quickly everything passed. Not long ago, the plague fires were still smoking here, and the dreadful body burners ruled. And now life went on. People laughed and joked. And he was no different. There he sat, delighted to see these things again, feeling grateful and even sensing warmth in the heart for the burgher, as though there had been no misery, no death, no Linnae, no Jewish princess. Smiling, he stood up and walked on. Only when he approached Master Nicholas's house and walked again the street he had walked to work every day long ago, did his heart begin to pound with anguish and worry. He walked faster. He wanted to call on the master that very day, to know where he stood. To wait until tomorrow seemed impossible. Was the master perhaps so angry with him? All that had been so long ago. It could no longer have any importance, but if it did, he would overcome it. If only the master was still there, he and his workshop, then all would be well. Hurriedly, as though afraid to miss something at the very last moment, he walked toward the familiar house, reached for the doorknob, and had a terrible chill when he found the door locked. Was that a bad sign? Before, the door was never kept locked in broad daylight. Loudly he let the knocker fall and waited, sudden fear in his heart. The old woman who had received him when he first entered this house came to open. She had not grown any uglier, only older and unfriendlier, and she did not recognize Goldmund. With anguish in his voice, he asked for the master. She looked at him, dumb and distrustful. Master? There is no master here. On your way, man. We let nobody in. She tried to push him back out into the street, and he took her by the arm and yelled, Speak, Margaret, for heaven's sake, I'm Goldmund. Don't you know me? I must see Master Nicholas. No welcome shone in her far-sighted half-blind eyes. There's no Master Nicholas anymore, she said coldly. He is dead. Be on your way. I can't stand here and chat. Everything collapsed inside Goldmund. He shoved the old woman aside. She ran after him, screaming as he hurried through the dark hall toward the workshop. It was closed. Still followed by the nagging, scolding old woman, he ran up the stairs. In the twilight of the familiar room, he saw the figures Nicholas had collected. Loudly he called for Mistress Lisbeth. A door opened and Lisbeth appeared. He recognized her only when he looked a second time. The sight contracted his heart. Ever since the moment he had been shocked to find the door bolted, everything in the house had seemed ghost-like, as though under a spell or in a nightmare. But now, at the sight of Lisbeth, a shudder went down his spine. Beautiful, proud Lisbeth had turned into a shy, bent-over old maid with a yellow, sickly face, a plain black dress, insecure eyes, and an attitude of fear. Forgive me, he said. Margaret didn't want to let me in. Don't you know me? I'm Goldmund. Tell me, oh tell me, is it true that your father is dead? He saw in her eyes that she had recognized him, and also that he was not in good standing here. Oh, so you are Goldmund, she said, and he recognized something of her proud manner in her voice. You have troubled yourself in vain. My father is dead. And the workshop? He blurted out. The workshop is closed. If you're looking for work, you must go elsewhere. He tried to control himself. Mistress Elizabeth, he said in a friendly tone, I'm not looking for work. I only wanted to say God bless you to the master and to you. I'm so sad to hear this. I can see that you have been through terrible times. If a grateful disciple of your father's can be of any service to you, please say so. It would be a joy to me. Ah, Mistress Elizabeth, my heart is breaking to find you this way, in such deep sorrow. She withdrew to the door of the room. Thank you, she said hesitatingly. You can no longer be of service to him or to me. Boof, in your face. Margaret will show you out. Her voice sounded bad, half angry, half fearful. He felt if she had the courage, she would have thrown him out cursing. Soon he was downstairs and the old woman slammed the door behind him and pushed the bolts. He could still hear the hard clicking of those two bolts. It sounded to him like the locking of a coffin lid. Slowly, he returned to the embankment. Again, he sat at the old place above the river. The sun had gone down. Cold came up from the water. The stone on which he sat felt cold. The street along the embankment had grown quiet. The stream foamed around the pillars of the bridge. The depths of the water were dark. No gold shimmer blinked up anymore. Oh, he thought, if I fell over this wall and disappeared in the river. Again, the world was filled with death. An hour passed, and the twilight turned to night. At last he was able to weep. He sat and wept, warm drops falling on his hands and knees. He wept for his dead master, for the lost beauty of Lisbeth, for Linnae, for Robert, for Rebecca, for his wilted, squandered youth. Later he found a tavern where he had once often drunk with friends. The owner recognized him. He asked her for a piece of bread, and she gave it to him. She was friendly. She also gave him a mug of wine. He could not swallow the bread or drink the wine. That night he slept on a bench in the tavern. In the morning the owner waked him. He thanked her and left, eating the piece of bread in the street. He walked to the fish market. There stood the house in which he had once had a room. Beside the fountain, a few fishwives were offering their live wares. He stared into the barrels, at the beautiful, glittering animals. He had often seen this before. He remembered how he had felt pity for the fish and anger against the fishwives and the shoppers. He remembered one morning when he had roamed here, admired the fish and felt sorry for them, and when he had been very sad. Much time had passed since then. Much water had washed down the river. He remembered his sadness well, but he could no longer remember what made him so sad. It was that way with everything. Even sadness passed, even pain and despair, as well as the joys. Everything passed, faded, lost its depth, its value. And finally, there came a time when one could no longer remember what had pained one so. Pains, too, wilted and faded. Would today's pain also wilt one day and be meaningless? His deep despair at his master's death, at his dying in anger against him, his hurt that no workshop was open in which he could taste the joy of creating and roll the weight of images from his soul. Yes, doubtless this pain, this bitter need, would also grow old and tired. It too would be forgotten. Nothing had permanence, and he regretted that too. As he stared at the fish, absorbed in these thoughts, he heard a low, friendly voice speak his name. Goldmund, someone called shyly. And when he looked up, he saw a delicate, sickly young girl with beautiful dark eyes who was calling to him. He did not know her. Goldmund, is that you? It is you, isn't it? Said the timid voice. How long have you been back in the city? Do you know me anymore? I'm Marie. He did not know her. She had to tell him that she was the daughter of his former landlord, who on that early morning of his departure had warmed milk for him in the kitchen. She blushed, telling this. Yes, it was Marie, the sickly child with the lame hip, who had taken care of him that day with such timid sweetness. Now it all came back to him. She had waited for him that cool morning and had been so sad that he was leaving. She had cooked milk for him, and he had given her a kiss which she had received quietly and solemnly as if it were a sacrament. He had never thought of her again. Now she was grown up and had very beautiful eyes, though she still limped. He shook hands with her. He was so glad that someone in the city knew and loved him. Marie took him with her. He resisted only half-heartedly. He was invited to eat with her parents in the room where his painting was still hung, where his ruby red glass stood on the mantelpiece. They asked him to stay a few days. They were glad to see him again. Then he learned what had happened to his master's house. Nicholas had not died of the plague, but beautiful Lisbeth had fallen ill with it, and for a long time lain deathly sick, and her father nursed her until he died himself. A few weeks before she was quite cured. She was saved, but her beauty was gone. The workshop stands empty, said the landlord. That'd be a nice home for a good image carver, and there'd be plenty of money. Think about it, Goldmund. She wouldn't say no. She no longer has a choice. He heard about the days of the plague, how the mob had set fire to a hospital, had stormed and pillaged several rich burghers' houses, how for a while, after the bishop had fled, there had been no order or safety in the city, that when the emperor, who happened to be in the region, sent the governor, Count Heinrich. No, that's when the emperor, who happened to be in the city, sent the governor, Count Heinrich. Well, he was a dapper gentleman. He had restored order in the city with a couple of horsemen and soldiers. But now it was time his reign had come to an end. The bishop was expected back. The count had imposed hardships on the citizens, and they had seen quite enough of his concubine, Agnes, who was a vixen. Well, soon they'd be off. The city council had long since got sick of having to deal with this courtier and warrior, who was the emperor's favorite and received emissaries like a prince, instead of with the good bishop. Now Goldman was questioned about his adventures. Atch, he said quietly, let's not speak of it. I wandered and wandered, and the plague was everywhere, and the dead lay all about, and everywhere the people grew mad and wicked with fear. I survived. Perhaps one day we'll forget it all. Now I've come back, and my master is dead. Let me stay here for a few days and rest. Then I'll wander on. He did not stay in order to rest. He stayed because he was disappointed and undecided, because memories of happier times made the city dear to him, and because poor Marie's love did him good. He could not return it. He could give her nothing but friendliness and pity, but her quiet, humble admiration warmed his heart. But more than all this, the burning need to be an artist once again kept him in this place, even without a workshop, even with only makeshift tools. For a few days, Goldman did nothing but draw. Marie found pen and paper, and he sat in his room and drew hour after hour, filling the large sheets now with hasty sketches, now with lovingly delicate figures, letting the overfilled picture book inside him flow out onto the paper. Many times he drew Lene's face, the way it smiled with satisfaction, her love and murder lust after the vagrant's death, her face as it had been the last night, in the process of melting into formlessness and its return to the earth. He drew the small peasant boy who he had seen lying dead across his parents' threshold, with little clenched fists. He drew a cart full of corpses, with three pitiful, straining nags pulling it, the death churls running beside it with long staffs, their eyes squinting darkly from the shadows of their black plague hoods. Again and again he drew Rebecca, the slender, black-eyed girl, her proud, narrow mouth, her face full of sorrow and indignation, her graceful young figure that seemed created for loving, her proud, bitter mouth. He drew himself as the wanderer, the lover, the fugitive from death's reaper, as a dancer at the orgies of the life greedy. He sat absorbed over the white paper, drew the contemptuous face of Mistress Elizabeth the way he had known her in former days, the caricature of the old servant Margaret, the loved and feared face of Master Nicholas. Several times, with thin, intuitive strokes, he also sketched a large female figure, the Earth Mother, sitting with hands in her lap, a hint of a smile in her face, under melancholy eyes. The outpouring of work, the mastering of these faces did him great good. In a few days, he filled with drawings all the sheets Marie had found for him. He cut off a piece of the last sheet, and on it he drew Marie's face with sparing strokes, the beautiful eyes, the resigned mouth, and gave it to her. Drawing had greatly lessened his feelings of heaviness and lightened the bursting fullness in his soul. As long as he was drawing, he did not know where he was. His world consisted of nothing but a table, white paper, and at night a candle. Now he awoke, remembered the most recent events, saw more hapless roaming ahead of him, and began strolling through the city with a strangely split sensation, half of homecoming, half of departure. On one of these strolls, he met a woman. Seeing her refocused all his disordered feelings and gave them a new center. She was riding a horse, a tall, light blonde woman with curious, cool blue eyes and a firm, strong body, a blossoming face full of eagerness for pleasure and power, self-esteem, and a certain sniffing curiosity of the senses. She sat on her brown horse, somewhat domineering and proud, accustomed to giving orders, but not withdrawn or haughty. Her nostrils seemed to be open to all the scents of the world, and her large, loose mouth was obviously capable of taking and giving to the highest degree. The moment Goldman saw this woman, he became fully awake and full of desire to measure himself against her. Okay, Goldman. To conquer her suddenly seemed a noble goal to strive for, and if he were to break his neck on the way, it would not have seemed a bad death to him. He felt that this blonde lioness was his equal, rich in sensuality and soul, at the mercy of all storms, wild as well as delicate, well versed in passion from an ancient heritage of blood. Wouldn't we all want a man to describe us this way? Oh, that's a great description. I really like that. As she rode past, he followed her with his eyes. Between curly blonde hair and blue velvet collar, he saw her firm neck strong and proud, yet covered with the tenderest skin. She was, he thought, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He wanted to hold his neck in his hands and wrest the blue, cool secret from her eyes. It was not difficult to find out who she was. He soon learned that she lived in the castle, that she was Agnes, the governor's mistress. Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun. It did not surprise him. She might have been the empress herself. At the fountain basin, he stopped and looked at his mirror image. It matched the blonde woman's face like a brother's, except that it was rather unkempt. That very hour, he visited the barber he knew and persuaded him to cut his hair and beard and comb it clean. The pursuit lasted 2 days. Whenever Agnes came out of the castle, the blonde stranger was standing at the gates, looking admiringly into her eyes. Agnes rode around the ramparts, and the stranger watched her from under the elms. Agnes visited a jeweler, and, as she left the shop, she met the stranger. Light sparkled out of her masterful eyes. Her nostrils quivered slightly. The next morning, when she found him again standing in readiness at her first ride, she smiled her challenge at him. She also saw the count, the governor, who looked bold and imposing. He had to be taken seriously, but there was gray in his beard and worry in his face, and Goldmund felt superior to him. These 2 days made him happy. He was radiant with recovered youth. It was beautiful to show himself to this woman and to offer her combat. It was beautiful to lose his freedom to this beauty, beautiful and deeply exciting to gamble his existence on a single throw. On the morning of the third day, Agnes rode out through the castle gates, accompanied by a groom on horseback. Immediately her eyes searched for the pursuer, ready for combat, and a trifle concerned. There he was, and she sent the groom off on an errand. Slowly she rode ahead alone, out to the bridge gate and across the bridge. Only once did she look back, and saw the stranger following her. She waited for him on the road to the pilgrim shrine of St. Vitus, which was deserted at this hour. She had to wait for half an hour, as the stranger walked slowly and did not want to arrive out of breath. Fresh and smiling, he came walking up, a little twig with a bright red haw on it in his mouth. She had dismounted and tethered her horse, and stood leaning against the ivy of the steep buttressing wall, gazing at her pursuer. He came up to her, looked her in the eye, and raised his cap. "Why are you running after me?" she asked. "What do you want from me?" "Oh," he said, "I'd much rather make you a present than accept one. I'd like to offer myself to you as a present, beautiful woman, to do with me as you will." "All right, I'll see what can be done with you. But if you think that here is a little flower you can pluck without risk, you've made a mistake. I can only love men who risk their life if necessary." "You may command me." Slowly, she detached her thin gold chain from her neck and handed it to him. "What is your name?" "Goldmund." "Good Goldmund. I shall have a taste of your golden mouth. Listen carefully. Toward evening, you will take this chain to the castle and say that you found it. But don't let it out of your hands. I want to receive it directly from you. Come as you are. Let them take you for a beggar. If one of the servants scolds you, remain calm. I have only 2 people in the castle who are trustworthy, the stable groom Max and my chambermaid Berta. You must reach one of these 2 and let them lead you to me. With all others in the castle, including the count, conduct yourself carefully. They are enemies. You've been warned. It may cost you your life." He's risking a lot for some. But he did say it was worth it. That's how she made him feel, so he's not going to die, obviously. Okay, she held out her hand. He took it smilingly, kissed it gently, softly rubbed his cheek against it. Then he put the chain away and walked off downhill toward the river and the city. The vineyards were already bare. One yellow leaf after another floated from the trees. Laughingly, Goldman shook his head, and looking down into the city, he found it friendly and lovable. Only a few days ago, he had been sad, even sad that misery and suffering passed. And now, indeed, it had already passed, fluttered down like the golden leaf from a branch. It seems to him that love had never shone so brightly for him as it did from this woman, whose tall figure and blonde, joyful energy reminded him of the image of his mother as he had once, as a boy, in Maria Braun, carried in his heart. 2 days ago, it would not have thought possible that the world would laugh so gaily in his eyes, that he would once more feel the stream of life, of joy, of his youth running so fully and urgently through his veins. What a joy to be still alive, to have been spared by death during all these gruesome months. In the evening, he went to the castle. There was a great bustle in the courtyard. Horses were being unsaddled, messengers were scurrying about, servants were conducting a small procession of priests and church dignitaries through the inner door and up the stairs. Goldman wanted to go after them, but the porter held him back. He pulled out the gold chain and said he had been ordered to hand it to no one but the lady herself or her chambermaid. He was given the escort of the servant and was made to wait for a long time in the corridors. Finally, a pretty, nimble woman appeared, walked past him, and asked in a low voice, "Are you Goldmund?" She motioned him to follow her. Quietly, she vanished through a door, reappeared after a while, and motioned him in. He entered a small room that smelled strongly of furs and perfume, and there were dresses and coats and ladies' hats on wooden stands, and all kinds of boots in an open chest. Here he stood and waited for half an hour, perhaps. He sniffed at the scented gowns, brushed his hands over the furs, and smiled with curiosity at all the pretty stuff that hung there. Finally, the inner door opened, and it was not the chambermaid but Agnes herself, in a light blue dress with white fur burning around the neck. Slowly she walked up to the waiting man, marking each step, her cool blue eyes looking earnestly at him. "You've had to wait," she whispered. Or maybe I should say it again. "You've had to wait," she whispered. "I think we're safe now. A committee of church officials is with the Count. He is dining with them. They'll probably have long discussions. Sessions with priests always last a long time. The hour is yours and mine. Welcome, Goldmund." She bent toward him. Her demanding lips approached his. Silently, they greeted each other in a first kiss. Slowly, he closed his hand about her neck. She led him through the door into her bedchamber, which was high and brightly lit by candles. On a table, a meal stood prepared. They sat down. She served him bread and butter and a little meat, and poured white wine for him into a beautiful bluish glass. They ate, both drinking from the same bluish chalice, their hands playing probingly with each other. "Whence have you flown, my beautiful bird?" she asked him. "Are you a warrior, a musician, or are you just a poor wayfarer?" "I'm everything you want me to be," he laughed. "I'm all yours. I'll be a musician if you like. And you are my sweet lute. And when I put my fingers around your neck and play on you, we'll hear the angels sing. Come, my heart. I'm not here to eat your cakes and drink your white wine. I've come only for you." He gently pulled the white fur from her neck and caressed her clothes off her body. Courtiers and priests held their sessions outside. Servants crept about the halls. The thin sickle moon floated away behind the trees. The lovers knew nothing of it. For them, paradise bloomed. Drawn toward each other and entangled in one another, they lost themselves in the perfumed night, saw its white flowering secrets shimmer in the darkness, plucked its longed-for fruit with tender and grateful hands. Never had the musician played on such a lute. Never had the lute sounded under such strong and knowing fingers. "Goldmund," she whispered glowingly in his ear. "Oh, what a sorcerer you are. I want to have a child by you, sweet Goldmund, and still more, I'd like to die with you. Drink me to the dregs, beloved. Melt me, kill me. Deep in his throat, a tone of happiness sounded as he saw the harshness in her cool eyes dissolve and grow weak. Like a tender, expiring shiver, the shudder in the depths of her eyes spent itself like the silver shudder on the skin of a dying fish. Golden as the sparkling of those magic shimmers, deep down in the river, all the happiness a human could experience seemed to come together in this moment. Immediately afterward, as she lay with closed eyes, trembling, he got up and slipped into his clothes. With a sigh, he spoke into her ear. My beautiful treasure, I am leaving you. I don't feel like dying. I don't want to be killed by your count. First, I want us to be as happy as we have been today. One more time. Many more times. She lay in silence until he was dressed. Gently, he pulled the cover over her and kissed her eyes. Goldmund, she said. Oh, I am sorry that you must go. Do come back tomorrow. I'll let you know if there is danger. Come back tomorrow. She pulled at a bell rope. The chambermaid received him at the door to the wardrobe and led him out of the castle. He would have liked to give her a gold piece. For a moment, he felt ashamed of his poverty. It was almost midnight when he got back to the fish market and looked up at the house. It was late and nobody would be awake. Probably he would have to spend the night outside. To his surprise, he found the door open. Softly, he crept inside and closed the door behind him. The way to his room led to the kitchen, which was lit. Marie sat at the kitchen table by a tiny oil lamp. She had just dozed off after waiting for hours. When he entered, she started and sprang to her feet. Oh, he said, Marie, are you still up? I'm up, she said, or you would have found the house locked. I'm sorry that you waited, Marie. It's late. Don't be angry with me. I'll never be angry with you, Goldmund. I'm only a little sad. You must not be sad. Why sad? Oh, Goldmund, I'd so like to be healthy and beautiful and strong. Then you would not have to go to strange houses during the night and make love to other women. Then you would perhaps stay with me once and be a little sweet to me. Her mild voice sounded hopeless, but not bitter, only sad. Embarrassed, he stood in front of her. He felt sorry for her. He did not know what to say. But with a cautious hand, he reached for her head and stroked her hair. She stood very still and shuddered as she felt his hand on her hair. Then she wept a little, held her head up again and said timidly, Go to bed now, Goldmund. I've been talking nonsense. I was so sleepy. Good night. Oh, what a bittersweet chapter. Like the excitement and energy that he found someone so beautiful, and then he found out it was the Count's boo, and then this poor girl is in love and she's like, oh, you think I'm not as cute as the other girls? I wish you would be here with me. Until the next chapter.